Hello, it's time to talk French politics. Here I'm Molly Hall.
And I'm Mark Perlman. Thank you for joining us. Coming up in today's show, the 5 leading candidates square off in a primetime televised debate.
And leftist supporters voice frustration over their weak and divided political wing.
Plus, how tech-savvy are the candidates? We take a look at their digital campaigns. That's up next in the Political Brief.
It's a first for French politics. 5 top presidential candidates and 3 hours of televised debate. Jobs, terrorism, immigration, and Europe all up for discussion.
Yes, Molly, and viewers clearly tuned in. Almost 10 million people watch as the candidates clash over their opposing visions of France's future.
Former frontrunner François Fillon was the first to speak during an often fiery TV debate. Under investigation over allegations of misappropriating public funds, he himself was quick to find fault with the format of the debate because it only included 5 of the 11 presidential candidates. Fillon tried to stand out as a man with experience, but his track record was attacked by socialist Benoît Hamon.
It never helped unemployment to reduce working hours, Monsieur Hamon. Stop deceiving yourself.
You were Prime Minister for 5 years. You failed miserably on these matters.
What about you? As François Hollande's minister, do you think you didn't fail? We have 2 former Hollande ministers here who both failed abysmally and who are trying to hide it.
Hamon struggled to take centre stage despite clashes with the centrist Emmanuel Macron over his former roles as a banker and economy minister and the funding of his campaign.
Were there not many donors from the pharmaceutical industry, the oil industry, and the financial sector?
I make this formal pledge. I am not shackled by anyone. I am free. My financing is transparent, which is processed by the Electoral Commission, and the identity of benefactors is confidential.
After a shaky start, far-left firebrand Jean-Luc Mélenchon elaborated on his domestic and foreign policies.
It's time for us to renegotiate our frontiers, but not war. Negotiations. I don't want us to be dragged into the wars of the North Americans who go here and there and will finish by setting fire to the whole world.
Mélenchon was the only candidate to address the separate investigations underway into Fillon and the far-right candidate Marine Le Pen, who's being probed about money spent on her party's European Parliament assistance. She mainly spoke to her own supporters and kept to her favourite themes, including immigration, the bikini swimsuit and the EU.
Most of the promises that have been made tonight won't be able to be kept for a very simple reason. The European Union shackles us. They tell us what to do, frustrate us, and that every time we try to implement something coherent. Well, as you know, we aren't allowed to do it.
It was the first time presidential candidates had taken part in a TV debate before the first round of elections. It remains to be seen how much of an impact the medium has on undecided voters.
Now, there were several key exchanges between the 2 frontrunners, Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen. And Mark, one concerned the burkini, that, of course, the head-to-toe swimsuit that created a controversy last summer when it was banned by several mayors in southern France. Take a look.
I know you support burkinis, Mr. Macron.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Le Pen. I can speak for myself. I do not need a ventriloquist. I assure you I'm quite capable of stating my own opinions. When I need to say something, I say it.
So what is your opinion on burkinis?
I've said it quite clearly. It has nothing to do with secularism because it is not cultural. It is a matter of public order. Concerning the burkini, I want to avoid the traps that are laid out to us by those who wish to divide the French people.
Including you.
There is no burkini debate. The trap you are falling in through your provocations is that you're dividing society.
Well, Molly, we know for sure that Marine Le Pen wants to stop immigration, legal or illegal, leave the European Union, but clearly the role of Islam in France is one of her main weapons, and she feels that Macron is maybe shaky on this ground. So she wanted to test him, and he had to respond. He stood his ground because for him it's crucial to appear presidential.
Indeed, and we also saw Mark Le Pen really go at Macron's eagerness to present himself as a bit of a maverick. Take a look at that exchange.
There's something no one has mentioned, perhaps because they're closely involved. It's when people benefit from the system. They go through the best elite schools, and then you become a banker, and then you go back to
It's for me,
politics.
that she's aiming that at me.
Mr. Macron, this is not meant as a
At the same
personal attack. You're not the only one.
I'm delighted. You would be bored if I wasn't here. I'm delighted to be here with you.
Oh, don't take it
It's less
personally.
boring. Don't worry, I will continue to irritate you.
Well, Marine Le Pen targeting Macron there, saying he's tied to big business and financial interests, Mark, and she's not the only one doing this.
Yes, we heard both Benoît Hamon and Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the two leftist candidates, attack Emmanuel Macron and saying, yes, that he was tied to big business. And if there's any evidence emerging between now and the first round of the election on April 23rd, this could hurt Emmanuel Macron.
Yes, indeed. Well, before the debate, we saw the two main leftist candidates rally their supporters in Paris. Jean-Luc Mélenchon on the central streets and Benoît Hamon in a packed stadium. And Mark, it has to be said, these two rallies really tell the story.
Yes, indeed, because the left is not only trailing in the polls, it is also deeply divided. And we had our reporters, Catherine Nicholson and Florent Rodeau, at those rallies, and they asked supporters if they're disappointed that the left could not unite.
It would have been better if they'd found an agreement, but I also count a lot on voters coming to this gathering by their own free will.
I'm sad the left is so divided, especially seeing as there have never been such close programs between the radical left and the more moderate left. It's unfortunate, especially as it opens the way to the centre and to the right. In this case, we're likely to see the right and the far right in the second round.
It would have been a good thing, but as things stand, it's better to convince as many people as possible to mobilise and to do so outside the party machinery.
Well, voters there just doing the math and realizing that if there was only one candidate, he clearly would be in the running.
Yes, but even if they're close ideologically, Benoît Hamon and Jean-Luc Mélenchon are clearly very different, and they have their own ambitions. Mélenchon is 65. He won't bow out because it's probably his last election, and Hamon wants to take control of the Socialist Party after the election.
Well, now with the left in pieces, we asked supporters how worried they are about a possible victory of Le Pen and the far right.
Marine Le Pen may have been given too much public attention. I refuse to opt for the technical vote. I don't believe in it. I don't think that she has much more of a chance of winning than that. I believe in an open France, like here. So no, I believe in us. I believe in France. So no.
No, in my opinion, it's just a game between the mainstream parties. We'll do what we did with Chirac in 2002. You'll see, in the second round, the media will destroy her. So we'll have an African-style election with 70% for Macron or Fillon.
I still have trouble believing it, but we will say in terms of possibility, it is unlikely to happen, but it is possible in my opinion.
Well, so then that kid appears to be a bit worried there, but how about voters, Mark?
They are worried. The voters on the left are worried, and they're disoriented because back in 2002, when Le Pen's father reached the second round of the election against the conservative Jacques Chirac, the left went and voted en masse for Chirac. This time around, all the indication is that they could stay home, and so the abstention could be Marine Le Pen's best asset in this election.
All right, well, let's see where the latest polls put the candidates now. And we've seen these figures that are coming up. They were taken partly before and partly after Monday's big debate. We've got Marine Le Pen and Emmanuel Macron still in the lead. And in the second round, Macron still coming out on top. That one's again according to the latest figures.
And now we welcome our media editor, James Creedon. Hello,
Hi, Mark.
James.
Hi, Molly.
Hi, Mark.
You've been looking at the social campaigns of the candidate. Let's begin with the far left leader, Jean-Luc Mélenchon.
That's right, and then I'll work through the political spectrum of the major candidates. At least Jean-Luc Mélenchon has just hit 1 million followers on Twitter. He is celebrating that, as you might imagine, in rather dramatic style on Twitter and drawing attention to it even further. On YouTube as well, he is the most followed candidate. He has 238,000 subscribers. That means that, for example, his political rallies, he has a direct line of communication with the public, and he has used some very clever tools as well during his political rallies, such as using a hologram where he appeared in person in Lyon and then a sort of double hologram version of him in Paris. And these sort of techniques mean that people go onto his YouTube page, they look at the meeting, or the rally rather, and that way he gets around the mainstream media, which he is very critical of. And this is a direct line of communication with the public. So that's working very well for Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Benoît Hamon, the Socialist Party candidate, not so followed on social media compared to other candidates, 351,000 followers. He's just this week published his campaign clip or video, making the heart of France beat. So it's quite slickly edited. There's a very clear strategy, a very left-wing program. But for now, he's not doing as well as his far-left contender on social media. Meanwhile, the centrist candidate Emmanuel Macron, who only launched his political movement just 2 years ago, En Marche, or marching onward, it could be translated as. It's got a very slickly put-together, marketed website. His real challenge right now is to show that there's meat on the bones of his candidacy, and he is putting his program front and center of his website in a bid to prove to his critics or to those who have doubts about him that his candidacy is indeed a serious one and that he's not the candidate of compromise, agreeing with everybody, as his critics would say.
Now, James, we've got François Fillon, who has some fewer followers than Emmanuel Macron. Meanwhile, Marine Le Pen, she has most of them all on Twitter.
That's right. So François Fillon has just 463,000 followers on social media. He's using his website in particular to fight back against all of the bad press he's been getting. He has a section up here called Stop Antox, or Stop Bad Press, if you like. So he's really trying to get around the bad impression that has been created about his candidacy through a direct line of communication with his followers. But I guess that's a bit of an echo chamber as well, because who's going to be going on his website? Only people who, mostly people who are going to vote for him anyway. Marine Le Pen is the most followed candidate on Facebook and Twitter. She has 1.34 million followers. An